Welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I am your host, Courtney Anderson. I am so happy you're here today. Today we have a show that is part of our Financial Fierceness series. And of course, this is a series focused on what it sounds like, finance. And we're looking at our personal finance in this show, and we're being assertive, proactive. We are fierce. We are focused, we are organized, and we are going to do everything we possibly can to surpass our financial goals. As always, I encourage you to come to CourtneyAnderson.com to take part in all of the different resources we have available, share your ideas, feedback, anything that's on your mind. So today in our Financial Fierceness series, our specific show is one that I struggled with a little bit as we were looking at putting this show together in the show schedule. So the specific topic of our episode is what rich families know about college that poor families don't. What rich families know about college that poor families don't. Now, I mentioned that I struggled a bit. Part of it is, the phrasing, of course, of the title. It's always a challenge with these types of things. I mean, one of the reasons we do the show is because ideally we want people to take part in it. We want it to be successful. We want it to be a viable part of the business so that we can continue to do it. And because those are the goals, of course, we need people to know about us. That's part of my job and a lot of the marketing that we're doing. And it's also part of the job to create titles that are descriptive and yet try to open up an invitation for people to be a little bit curious and think, well, what's this about? And so it's, sometimes it's challenging with that because you look at some of the word choices and the language that's used, but I understand the purpose. And so the purpose is to get people to listen and participate. I don't necessarily think it's, the words rich and poor, they're not the most accurate, but they do, I think, create the overall big picture of what the show's about this specific episode. So let's sit down and work through it and see if there's anything that we can do to potentially be of service to help you surpass your goals and also address this idea. We're looking at being financially fierce, but what does that mean? What does that mean, and what is going to school have to do with it, right? What's school about? And I get this question all the time. So our argument and our topic is what rich families know about college that poor families don't. And we are looking to see if there's a correlation between college, which is what this episode's focused on, and our money, right? We're talking about being financially fierce. I often get questions and concerns, and people will say, you just focus a lot on all this, school, and that's because you like school, obviously, right? And I'm not going to disagree with that. I've already admitted and told the world on multiple times, I'm multiple occasions on multiple different times, I'm a nerd. I do like school. Actually, let me be really honest. I actually don't like school. I like information. So I don't want to misrepresent myself or try to whitewash my own history. I actually wasn't a very good school student, especially when I was younger. I didn't have the greatest attendance. I love ideas and information. And now I have a lot of issues. I share lots of programs and certainly ideas for improvement, what we can do to make education more useful and engaging, and less of sort of a rigid formality. So I'm going to be really clear. I love information and I love data and I love ideas. I did not like school. And if you saw my school records, which I don't even know if those exist somewhere maybe, for all the issues I had with attendance and tardiness and all of and sometimes attitude issues that resulted in my disciplinary action, it was pretty evident. Now my grades were fine because I like reading and I like ideas, and anything that was about the actual information I was fine, a test or a paper or some assignment. But the sort of go sit in this room all day, and some of the programs weren't even interesting or relevant to my future goals, and the rigid formality all of it, that wasn't my idea of a good time. So let me be very honest. Oh, I did not like school. Now I did love when I got out of primary and secondary school and went to college or university. I loved that because it was exactly what I wanted. I mean, you go to class for short amounts of time, you get all this really great information from people who are experts and or geniuses and or incredibly interesting, and then I can go read on my own and work at my own pace. I loved that. So because it was allowing me to sort of self customize. I could pick my own classes, right? So I love that because it opened up an opportunity for me to do what I wanted to the way I wanted to. So all of that's to say, what's this stuff about college? My argument is that knowledge is power, and that's some, it's a cliche. We've done programs on it, but I don't see any way to argue that you can get out there with no knowledge, no data, no information in the world and just sort of bumble into, wonderful outcomes. I think you have to have information and all sorts of things, right? You know, um, I don't think it hurts to know stuff. Now, some of the things that I like to know happen to be things that you can also academically go to formally study at universities. Other things that I like to know that I'm curious about, there's no university degree for it, but I'm just curious. So I just want to learn about the world. So I do believe in knowledge. I think if you don't know things, if you don't get good information from credible sources, you're going to have a very difficult time just in life in general. People take advantage of you. Um, and it's difficult to have control of your finances because you're not even making necessarily great choices about your finance because you don't know. Should you invest something? I don't know. Should you buy something or rent something? I don't know. How much should you pay for something? Who knows? Should you negotiate the price? I don't know. Should you have a budget? Do should you get a retirement fund set up? I don't know. Should you elect to take a pension if that's an option at your job? I don't know. I mean, you need information. Do you need to know everything about everything in the world? No, I don't believe that's actually possible. Should you have some interest in most things, at least enough so that you can figure out what's going on, at least big picture? I would argue, yeah. So I'm not a certified auto mechanic. It's not my area of expertise. I like cars. I like certain types of cars, like fast cars. I like cars that to me look nice. I'm interested in vehicles to a certain extent, but I wanted to know enough about a car. If I was going to buy a car, is that a good deal? I don't know. So I learned some of it. I learned because I shared in other programs. I worked as a car salesperson um, many years ago when I was in college. All that's to say, what knowledge is power. That's I believe, an accurate statement. Without knowledge, people take advantage of you. Whether it's buying a car, signing a lease, getting married, accepting a job, you name it, people are going to take advantage of you. Sometimes not necessarily, with ill intent. They just know more. You have an information um, deficit, and because of that, you have to ask other people what to do all the time. And that may not be helpful if that's a salesperson, right? They're not trying to do bad things to you, but they have their own motive, right? They're going to get a bigger commission if they tell you to buy this dishwasher or whatever. So when I go to buy a dishwasher, I'm not an expert on dishwashers. I don't know how to build one. I can tell you that, but I went and learned enough. I go to some credible sources, consumer reports, things of that nature, and I try to figure out what are some things that'd be interested to me in features, what would I want, and what are some of the longevity, what are some of the ratings and the quality of some of the dishwashers, so I can go out there and spend my money on a dishwasher that's not going to fall apart and it's not junk. I still may get a bad individual dishwasher, but maybe I had a good company that made it, so there's a warranty or there's a repair program or whatever. But yeah, I look into stuff. I don't need to, again, go out and try to think I'm going to get, a college degree and everything, but knowledge is power. Understanding that knowledge is power. And I'm arguing power, economic power, financial power, professional power, just power, consumer power. Then what does this have to do with formal education programs like college? Okay. One of the things that I started looking at, and first I'll tell you why. One of the reasons this show is challenging is because I often am really I guess this is the best word, surprised when I'll talk to people who have children who are either, young adults, so like, late teens, early 20s, who aren't in any type of formal education program. I'm surprised. It seems weird to me. It really just does. Like, I don't understand. How would you be, someone who's finishing high school or about to finish high school or just finished high school in the United States? Let me take just the U.S. for a minute. In the economy that we're in, right? Let's just say it is a knowledge economy for the argument. You know, let's just accept that for the moment. That people who are knowledge workers make more money and have more job opportunities. And what does knowledge worker mean? Well, it means you work with your mind. You're not working manually with your hands. Now, some people would say, hey, look, if somebody goes and they become an electrician or a plumber and they can make a great living. Yeah, you can, but those also require, in most places, in the US especially, they require formal programs. You're a licensed electrician. That's a big deal. Yeah, they do charge a lot of money. I know. I recently hired one. But they went to school for that, and they have a very, regulated requirements to be licensed in those trades. So when I say school, I mean either, a university or a college or a trade school, so that you're getting some kind of license or certification or credential that allows you to get out there. Even though a plumber or electrician, you would maybe think, oh, that's not a knowledge worker. Yeah, it is, because they have a very in-depth knowledge of electricity and plumbing and how it relates to other things. And that's why they can charge so much money, because they can fix things and understand things that most people can't. And in a way, they are knowledge workers. Now, part of it may be that they're physically manipulating things, but they're still working with knowledge. That's what they're paid for. They're not paid for their hands. Anybody can go out there and move wires around. They might electrocute themselves or burn some down, right? But they don't know what they're doing. It's the knowledge that is so important. That's what you're paying for. That's why you spend that time, and hours and everything to get your license and to maintain it. It's a big deal. It's the knowledge that's worth it. It's not what you're doing with your hands. So if I talk to a young adult or parents of a young adult and they're not in school, and by school in my mind is any type of thing that's going to lead to a license or degree, I don't understand it. And like I said, it's surprising and weird to me, because I think, what are you going to do for a living? How are you going to compete in this world where it's in my mind, it's just accelerating globally, where everybody that everywhere I've been in the world, from India to South Africa to Australia to the Netherlands to Mexico to the US to Canada, to Hong Kong to Japan, like everywhere I've been, I'm not naming everywhere, but I'm giving examples. I've seen basically on the ground, anecdotally, the same exact thing. People understand the power of knowledge, and they do everything they can to get their children into school and have opportunity. And then people, of course, immigrate, to other parts of the world. Many people immigrate to the U.S. for education, almost, predominantly, because they know the power of it. And it's weird to me, and this is something that I've noticed almost exclusively with Americans, people who multi-generation Americans. They don't have a sense of urgency. And I just worry, and I think, what job are you going to be able to hold 20 years from now if you're 18 today and you're not doing anything to get any type of certification or a degree or skill or anything, other than like a entry level minimum wage job? I just can't imagine what you're going to do. Now, of course, some people will say to me, well, I know somebody who went to college or went to trade school, and they're, poor and on public assistance, and see, it's total waste. Or they'll say, I know somebody who never went to school or trade school or anything, and now they're really rich. Okay. All right. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. I'm saying that what's possible and what's probable. It's probable that if you're a licensed electrician, as long as you're not under other, issues that are prohibiting you from working, maybe, a substance abuse problem or some other type of health issue, if you're able to work, you're going to be able to charge what the market rates are, which is going to be a heck of a lot more than minimum wage. If you have a college degree from a respected school that's accredited, you're going to have opportunities for different jobs. I mean, I don't know what to say. So instead of thinking, well, maybe I'll just get rich, right? Maybe I'll win the lotto. Maybe I'll invent something. It's possible, but it's much more likely. That's what probable means. If you just go ahead and get the credential or the license, then you don't have to even be lucky. That's the saying. There's a way where you don't even have to be lucky. All you have to do is just get this credential, this license, and then just go out there and do the minimum that requires. And you'll already have, 10 times what you would have made on minimum wage. So you don't even have to be fortunate. All you have to do is just finish this program. Get the credentials and then go out there and charge what the market will pay that. To me, it seems obvious, right? Like, I would just go out and get the credentials, and even if you don't even be the best, you can just be sort of like an average, maybe even below average electrician or attorney or, psychologist or plumber or whatever. But just because that knowledge and those credentials, so few people have them, it's going to be worth more. You're going to be able to charge different rates. It's going to be great. You just have to be there, right? It seems to me an easy way to just go out and make your life economically, financially, right? We're talking about financial fierceness, easy. Why not just go do something where you'll be able to charge $50 an hour instead of sitting around and doing something where you get minimum wage, which in the U.S., the federal minimum wage right now is somewhere in the $7 range, unless you work a job where you get tips, and it's even lower than that. Or there's some other exceptions too. Why would you not just go out and take the credentialing, the schooling, the hours, the internship, the apprentice, whatever, and then you'll not even have to do anything? To work your way just on luck and hope from $7 to $50 an hour is incredibly difficult. To just go out and get the credentials, take the time to do that. Some people say, I can't take 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. What else were you going to be doing in that same time? And it's weird. I went to a 10-year high school reunion, so I was somewhere around 27. And I went to several high schools, so it was just one of them. And it was interesting to me. There were people who in high school had been working like in a fast food restaurant, and some of the people 10 years later were working in that same fast food restaurant, they weren't manager or anything because they hadn't gone to school or got any kind of credentials or licensing or anything. So now they're in the exact same position, and maybe they make $2 or $3 more an hour. Why would you do that? 10 years went by. You could have gotten 15 different credentials in that time. That's an exaggeration, maybe, but maybe not, right? I'd go, get a real estate license. I mean, I can sit here and give you, go to cosmetology school and get a license to be a cosmetologist. I mean, I can give you a list of licenses, based on duration. But I don't understand this argument about, well, it takes so long. What are you going to be doing in the same years will pass? I'd rather have done something that even if I'm not even good or great, I'm just even below average, I'll just automatically get these different opportunities and income options. And I don't have to even do anything. Time went by the same time, and magic, it's not magic. I just completed these programs, completed these credentials. Now, boom, look at the money. Easy, done. The argument that it takes time is I don't get it. The time, unless you pass away, which it wouldn't have mattered anyway because you're dead, then why not take the 2, 3, 4 years and get the credential and license where, boom, you go out and you charge, whatever that market rate is, and I just use $50, it could be $30, it could be $200, right? Or more. I don't know, but why would you just go to school? And I don't care what kind of school, but you need something where that credential, that program, that license, that certification opens you up to different economic markets. If you don't do this and you're sitting in this huge, very low wage market, and I don't understand what the plan is. What the plan is to get to financial independence or anything else financially, which brings me to this. When you look at college, and I'm using college, university, but I'm going to add in trades and things of that nature. It makes sense that we do what we know to some degree, right? So, if I've never in my life, spoken French. I've never known anybody that speaks French. I don't speak French. I've never even heard anybody speak French. It makes sense maybe that I don't really know French. If I was born in a family where one of my parents spoke French or both of my parents spoke French at home, then it makes sense that I speak French too, right? Like I heard it, I learned it, I was around it. Now I speak French. Great, I have a skill, which is I would also add languages. We do other programs on this. Hugely important and helpful skill. Really, really, really important. Okay, so making the argument that it makes sense that I'm going to do what I know, and that if I'm just around opportunity, whether somebody speaks another language, and now I learn another language, great. In many schools, at least in the United States, public schools that I went to, they have public schools free in the United States. They have language programs, so ideally you do have the opportunity in many parts of the country to start learning languages even if you're not around another person. You would think, why do I want to learn another language? Because it opens up more opportunity for you to make more money. That's why, as a practical reason. Now, of course, as a sort of person who loves education, knowledge, why would you not? You can. It opens up more ideas, more experiences. You can read art, listen to music in the original language. It opens up more nuances to humor. It opens up more opportunity for friendships and knowledge. I mean, there's real information, but as a pragmatist, because you can charge that with that. You can go out there and I had an email yesterday looking for people who spoke multiple languages who are professional speakers as I am. And again, if somebody had this, in fact, I'm looking at the email right now. It's, oh wow, it's a list, right? It says, it asks if you speak French or Spanish, German, Portuguese, Chinese, Arabic, Bengali, Russian, Japanese, Korean, Italian, Dutch, Malay, or Hindi. Boom. Those are just some of the languages. And then it has a listing there for opportunities for you to go out and have more clients, because people want that client that speaks English and or one or more of those languages. So that's why. Everything you do that's knowledge that gives you an opportunity to differentiate what you can do professionally from what sort of everyone can do is going to result in potential opportunity. Not guaranteed, but potential. So I made the analogy, if you're one of your parents or both of your parents speak French, it makes sense that you learned French, right? Because you heard it at home, you practiced it, you spoke it, so you kind of got an easy way to learn another language. That's great. I'm going to make this argument. When we talk about rich and poor, now I'm not going to define those because it would, be debatable forever probably. But the federal government has cutoffs of what they consider to be the amount of money that a one person, two person, three person, four person, etc. size family would need public assistance or qualify for public assistance. And then there's a lot of debates in the culture about what's middle class. Everyone wants to think they're middle class. Very wealthy people want to think they're middle class. Very people who are barely above poverty lines want to think they're middle class because it makes everybody feel better. Just my personal opinion, and there's a lot of research about this. The argument is this, though. In the U.S., when you go to apply for competitive schools, and I've done other programs where we talk about if you're going to go to college, if you're going to go to a trade school, go to the, quote, best one. Now, people would say, well, how do I know the best one, right? What's the difference between Harvard and ITT Tech? I don't know. And I'm just throwing things out there. I've never gone to Harvard or ITT Tech. I've never been affiliated or taught for them or know anything. I'm just giving you examples of brand names, right? What's the difference between, quote, the best brand name of anything, right? A car, a refrigerator, or the, quote, worst? Well, there are going to be criteria, right? What refrigerator runs the longest without, falling apart? What refrigerator cools your food, the most effectively? What refrigerator has the best resale value? These are things people can measure. It's the same thing with school. So if you're looking at a trade school, you're looking at a cosmetology school, you're looking at, a competitive school or highly competitive school in the U.S. Now, some of these schools have such a long history for excellence in the society that people know the name even if they're not really sure why they're important or special. But I've put in other shows, I know I'm doing this from memory, but I know in other show notes, and I'll look it up and find the links. But in these show notes, lists, if you don't know where to start, and these are only for universities, so they're not for colleges, which are usually 2-year community programs that'll get you to an associate degree in the United States. And I don't know, and I don't have a list for trade schools, although I know it exists, and I know we certainly could find that. The deal is you're going to spend the time, right? My argument is you're going to spend the same amount of time if you could have gone and gotten a license or certification that would have opened you up to higher wages automatically, or you could sit around doing a minimum wage job or nothing and just waiting for something, great like winning the lotto to happen. So that's my argument about time. My argument about where you're going to go spend your time is go to the school that has the best reputation with employers, with society at large, and professions, because that's going to give you the best outcome, right? And so if you don't know where to go, start with those lists. Now, this show is looking at something that is, to me, really powerful data. And I just have a few, links in the show notes. But basically, think about this. Here's a quote from one of the articles in the show notes. This is from a New York Times. Americans, so this is just focused on the U.S., so it's not global in reach, but it's something we can certainly use as a starting point. Americans with four-year college degrees make 98% more an hour on average in 2013 than people without a degree. So let's just sit there. We don't have to be math genius. 98% is an incredible amount more. 98% more an hour. That's up from 89% an hour, right? More an hour 5 years earlier. 85% a decade earlier, and 64% in the early 1980s. Now I would argue, generically, big picture, that's correlating with the knowledge economy, that so many jobs are specialized on what you know, whether it's being an electrician, cosmetologist, real estate professional, attorney, surgeon. I don't care, but it's about knowledge. Now, can you combine that with physical things like operating on somebody or repairing some electricity at a location? Yeah, but it's knowledge that people pay you for. So as more and more jobs require knowledge, and technology has stepped up, and so a lot of jobs, I know my great aunt, my grandmother, many people in their generation were worked in factories. Not my grandmother specifically, but they knew a lot of people that went to go work in big manufacturing factories and production companies, and Detroit and many of the areas of that in that time in the 1940s and 1950s that were booming. And humans could just be on an assembly line where you don't have to have an incredible amount of knowledge. You have to have just sort of a specific knowledge for this part of an assembly line. But you could make very high wages and had a very high standard of living at that time. Technology has replaced so much of this. Robots do a lot of it. So the repetitive work you're not going to get paid that much for because A, I can either have technology do it or I can offshore it to another part of the world where it'll be much cheaper for me to hire labor. 98% more an hour. That doesn't say that that's the genius with the four-year degree from the best school in the number one in the world and was the valedictorian. No, you could be average or below average. You just need to get that credential from now an accredited. So there's places that call themselves colleges that aren't recognized by the federal government as such and are just sometimes sort of set up to take advantage of people, but a university and that's accredited. That's not even the leader of it. That's just anybody who graduated on average. Now, of course, if you graduated and you were the genius of your class, and you're going to have even more opportunity. But why would you not go take advantage of something that, again, you invest the same amount of time you could have invested on doing whatever else, and it automatically is going to give you an opportunity for an advantage without even being that great at it? That seems to me pretty obvious. And unfortunately, it looks like similar to the situation where someone speaks French at home and their children learn French, that these things run in families. Another one of the resources I've noted in the show notes, it says, there's a quote in there, and it says, in the old days, in, say, the 1980s, which is all relative, right? The parental income predicted children's success. This is talking about children. Again, I talked a little while ago about how I think it's weird or I think it's surprising when I talk to young people or their parents and they're not in school. I just don't understand what's going to happen to them. I worry. So this says in the old days, parental income predicted children's success, which sort of makes sense, right? So you would think, oh, you have a parent, we'll just call them rich. So whatever number that is to you. I don't care if to you that's $40,000 a year or $400,000 a year or $4 million a year. I don't care. We're just going to whatever you call that, right? Then their children are going to have more successful outcomes in terms of education. It says, the quote goes on to say, now the parental education variable appears to be more powerful than income. So it's not how much the parents made, but it's how much education the parents have. Another statistic says, this is talking about young people, again, finishing primary and secondary school, high school. It says fully 76% of those children finishing high school who had two parents with college degrees said they entered a 2-year or 4-year college immediately after high school, which is what I did. I mean, there's a summer Well, actually, that's not even true. That summer I went to community college. So right after high school, I was in college, and I'd already taken classes in high school, advanced placement classes that you can take as a high school student in the U.S. And this is several decades ago now, right? um, uh, that will give you college credit if you take the class and you take a test and sort of show your knowledge at the end. So I had all kind of college credit. Okay, 76% of people who had two parents with college degrees went right into school after into college or university after high school. That's almost double the 37% of those from no degree families. So that's with no parent with the college degree. It says just under 3/5 of those from the no degree families who started college finished. And remember, finishing is the whole point. Going to college and not finishing, we have other programs on this, is not worth anything because you can't do anything with it. You have to finish it. So if I need an electrician and I go to a website and somebody says, "Hey, I went to an electrician program, I didn't finish, I'm not licensed." Well, I can't do anything with that, right? You can't actually charge for the service and get into this good income opportunity unless you finish it. You have to finish it. So if you start it, you better finish it. And like I said, you don't need to be first in the class. You don't need to be in the middle. I don't care if you're the last in the class. You have got to finish. Because without finishing, all the other work is totally worthless. Not worthless in terms of you got to enjoy it and you learn things, you met new people, and all of that is wonderful. But you can't do anything in terms of selling those skills because you don't actually own the skill. You just said you just tried a little bit. You got to finish it. Okay. I'm reading statistics. Some people say statistics, everybody lies, 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 statistics. All right, here's the point. The numbers, and I don't care where you go look at the numbers, show you that if you have certification, college degree, you earn more on average than if you don't. That is a fact. Now, how much you earn is debatable depending on what statistics you looked at and how many people they asked and what year they asked. But in 2014, which is the time I'm recording this show, yes. The thing that's striking is that people who have college degrees, the rich family, I called them, they send their kids to school. And in fact, they have an entirely specific culture where they obsess over getting their children in the best college, quote unquote, possible. And there's this whole industry of people who coach the children on how to write an essay for their application, and coach the children on how to have an interview, and coach the children on how to take their tests, whether it's the PSAT or the SAT, to get them in the quote best school. It's an incredibly competitive, high stakes, high investment where the quote rich family spends a ton of money and time on doing everything they can. And I'll also add the family that's not rich in terms of income, but that's rich with education or aspiration. You see this with many immigrant families in the United States, many parts of the world. The parents may not have any education formally themselves, but that is the number one goal that they have for their children. They will do anything it takes, and I do mean anything, to help ensure that their children get into the best school. So you got one group of the society that's doing that, right? They have almost an arms race into, how competitive it is, and the prep time and tutoring and everything they can possibly do for enhance their test scores, their application, their essay, their interview to quote get in these top schools. The really depressing thing, I think, is that the people that are in that are doing that are either the families that themselves, the parents already have that education, already have that good income, and or that they come from families or communities or parts of the world where they may not have that opportunity themselves. Maybe they didn't have the opportunity themselves growing up, but they will, and I do mean this, they will do things that don't even seem possible to help their children get that chance. Now, sometimes they put a lot of pressure on their children. But if you look at it economically, and that's what we're talking about here, finances, you can see why. All you need is somebody in the family to go become a medical doctor, go out and make a couple $100,000 a year, and it's going to lift economically, potentially the whole family. Now, that puts a lot of pressure again on that person. But that's what happens. And so in a lot of these families and cultures, whether the family themselves are both, high earning, couple $100,000 medical doctors, or nobody in the family even finished primary school, but they decided their children are going to do that. There's such a premium on this because they know that that's sort of that's a golden ticket, right? Like that's I don't want to use the word easy, but it's the easiest way to go from economic need and very little opportunity to economic surplus and potentially on the way to financial independence. So that's why there's so much pressure on that. And as I said at the beginning of this episode, it's challenging to use the language, but I don't understand why someone who's in the quote poor, and again, define it however you want to, but you're not financially independent, okay, which is where you have way more money than you need and you have all your investments that just automatically give you passive income and you don't even have to work, quote unquote, or anything like that to earn money. Um, if you're quote poor, why you're not, I'm not saying that there are very unhealthy ways where people put way too much pressure on their children, right, to go to the quote best school. My argument is you just need to make, I don't say put pressure on, I'm just saying make it obvious that this is going to be easy, an easy way to the better life, quote unquote, and all they have to do is just go to school. Again, I'm not saying they need to be valedictorian. Now a lot of people feel like if it's not an A plus, if it's not the, if they're not at, I don't know, Princeton, they're not at any's place. Okay, but I think that's unhealthy. All you need to do is go to some school that's accredited, the best school you can get in terms of rankings, and then just finish. That's all I'm saying. Now now I'm not. Now maybe some people say, well, that's nothing. Look, I'm saying that to go from one socioeconomic strata to another, the fastest way to do it is education. And the easiest way to do it, because you're not waiting on winning a lottery or getting lucky. All you have to do is just show up. And all I'm saying is the hard part for most of these really competitive schools is the getting in part. Once you're in, very rarely does anyone not finish. Excluding somebody got sick or, something happened, or things of that nature. And let me just make this really clear. Another statistic from show notes. At Harvard, which is, even if you've never heard of any school, you've probably heard of Harvard. It's a very old and prestigious university. Old in terms of, a couple centuries. At Harvard, 45.6%, 45.6%, so right, 100% would be all, 45.6% is almost half, right, of undergraduates. So those are people coming to an undergraduate program, which historically are going to come right from their high schools. 45% of undergraduates at Harvard come from families with incomes above $200,000. Income above $200,000. I've done other shows where we talked about that in the United States, 6% of individuals make over $100,000 a year. 6% of individuals in the U.S. make over $100,000 a year. So you're talking about $200,000 a year. You're talking about, and the show notes quote says, in other words, incomes in the top 3.8% of all households. Now, households, remember, are two or more people combining income. It's really small when you look at individuals. Individuals over $200,000 is, it's going to be in the somewhere around, less than 1%. That little teeny tiny group, even if it's 3%, 3.8% of household, which is combined incomes, that's incredibly small, right? So 96% of incomes, 96% of households aren't in this group. But that little group has basically half, 45.6% of undergrad at Harvard. Why are rich people going to college? And yet people who are quote poor, the people will just take this, that aren't in these top income groups, they're not fighting to send their kids there. Why? That's the thing that I said surprises me and is weird. I don't get it. You would think that, quote, rich families, let's just take this, the households over $200,000 would be like, well, we're already rich. What do we care? Our kid can lay around all day and do nothing. Sometimes you see that, right? Kids who are very wealthy families and have a lot of motivation. And if they're given money, sometimes in trusts, right? Sometimes they're called trust fund kids. If you give them money, sometimes they don't have motivation, you get bad outcomes. People, don't have a lot to do with their time, sometimes make bad choices. Sometimes trust funds make great choices and go out and do wonderful things in the world. But you see this incredible pressure from households that are already in top income brackets to send their kids to these top schools. And yet you see people who, so my point is they're already well off. All it's going to do is just reinforce that. It's not going to be the same difference it would if you have a family that the household income is $20,000 and that kid goes to Harvard and goes out and makes, several $100,000 a year. That would be transformative for that entire family. If not financially, not that one person is going to support their whole family. Ideally, that is lends to bad outcomes, but that psychologically it shows people what you can do, right? And we do other programs. There's a ton of educational discussion about what they call high achieving low income kids, and what they mean is it's a kid who's really bright, high achieving, they test well, they the academic work is easy for them, but they're from low income families. They don't go to school at all, and if they do go to school, they're not applying to Harvard and Princeton and University of California, Los Angeles, or um, you know, University of Virginia or University of Texas at Austin. They're not applying to these schools. Why? It's weird. Again, I think it comes down to they don't know. And that's why I titled this show What Rich Families Know About College That Poor Families Don't. College is the easy way to just reinforce wealth, opportunity, access, professional entree into quote the good life. Rich families know that. And so they go and do, like I said, tutors, everything they can to give their kids advantages so they can send them to the quote best schools. And they're taking up almost half of the Harvard undergraduate class. Just that little teeny tiny group of really well off people. That's not an accident, it's intentional. Because they know that's just going to reinforce it. Reinforce what? Reinforce economic opportunity, professional opportunity. That's how if aspirations to do high profile jobs. It's where you make a lot of what they call connections, right? And that's where they send their kids. And they will do everything in their power to make that happen. And they know that. And the thing is that the families who would benefit the most from it, psychologically, economically, either don't. I'm going to say this. They actually don't know it. Because I think if they did know that that was the golden ticket, they wouldn't just let this little tiny group of the 3.8% of the wealthiest households go in there and take half the jobs. Slots in the Harvard class, which will relate to, for those who graduate, which is going to be overwhelmingly the majority of, really good potential job opportunities. If more numbers of households, I just call that poor families, knew this, then I guarantee you they'd be way more competitive. And you would say, well, they can't afford to hire a private tutor. They can't afford to hire all the, the coach who writes, helps the child learn their essays. That's true. But I'll tell you what, though, because they come from a family where they'd be first in their family to go to college, or they would be from an economically disadvantaged background, that's going to give the school more diversity. And the school is going to really be interested in that student. In fact, their odds of getting into some of these schools would be better with the same grades, right? Because they already have a whole bunch of people from the wealthy families. So they ideally would like to balance that with some other people from different parts of the strata in society. The thing is that people that are really talented don't apply. So that's what they call the high achieving low income student. Now, my argument would be beyond that. What about the low achieving low income student? Because a lot of these students that go to these really prestigious competitive schools, their families are, very, very successful, right? We talked about economics. They're not all geniuses. A lot of them, in fact, aren't their advantage into getting into these programs and staying there. Many of these schools, in fact, have what they call legacy. So that if your parents and grandparents and whoever went to these schools, you can put that on your application, and it shows. Like, it gives you extra sort of an opportunity to be potentially considered because your legacy, right? My family went here. And I'm not saying stop that necessarily. Okay, if you're going to give those families who already are successful, you can assume, since their other ancestors went there, an opportunity, then I say then give everybody else an opportunity. Of course, athletes, you have a special athletic skill. Often you'll go to schools that are very competitive academically that also have an interest in sports. My argument though is, what about the low achieving high income kid is not really worried, because even though they're low achieving on their test scores and everything, they have so much institutional knowledge in their family. People are going to do everything they can to get them in the best school they can, and they do. What about all the other kids who aren't in this sort of elite economic strata? They're not, quote, rich. And what they don't know is that that's the easy way. That's why all the rich people are over there doing that. They're not doing that just for fun or because it's, they're bored and nothing else to do. They're doing it because they know how important it is, and they know that that's the easy way to do this. So they're going to go do this. And I don't think that enough, quote, poor families, and again, only using these words as descriptors, get it. That's the easy way. You're not going to go work in an entry level job with a seventh grade education or even a high school equivalency or high school degree and just magically go out and make millions of dollars a year. It could happen. Anything's possible. Is it probable? No. You need to go and compete. You who? Everybody. Now, if you're already a rich family, you already know this. You already are competing. So great. But if you're not in that rich group, then I'm telling you the answer and the secret. You have got to go and get your kids and yourself, if you still have the interest and the desire, in the best training certification school you can. You must finish it. And then you have sort of the easy ticket into this different life, economically, financially. I have another statistic on this show, and it shows education and income, right? So, you can make $827 a week on average without a lot of education. You make $1,714 a week with more. What do you want? It's all, these are all variations on the same thing. 98% more an hour. It's just over and over and over again saying that's the secret. That's the easy ticket to individually and collectively as a family. And then once one person goes to these competitive programs and schools and has this higher economic situation, then what they do is try to reinforce that in the next generations. Not every kid in every one of these well-off families, quote, succeeds. I mean, we all see these horrible examples. Someone came from, quote, the best family, and the person made, really poor choices, and it was their life, they ended up in prison or something. But the statistics of that are minuscule. College is a requirement. And I'm expanding that to include, trade schools. You have got to go get some sort of certification or license or degree. Otherwise, you're going to be in a very, very difficult way to compete in a global knowledge economy. It's going to be highly improbable. The easy way, go get your license certification from the best school you can. I don't care if you loved every minute of it. I said earlier I wasn't necessarily the fondest person of school. You will complete it. And then now you have the secret. And now, even though you're the exact same person, I'm the exact same person I was when I worked for $3.85 an hour at a fast food restaurant, as I was literally a few years later when I finished law school and was licensed as an attorney, and I went out and started making a couple $100s an hour. Nothing changed magically. It's not like I'm, oh wow, how long will I have been able to work my way up from $3.85 an hour to $200 an hour? No. And could I have done it in like 4 years? And including the 4 years as I was already an undergrad, but could I have done it in 7 years? Could I have done it in 30 years? No. So the secret and the easy thing is you must go get your easy ticket to your good job. And again, I don't care if it's $20 an hour in your mind or $200 an hour in the mind or whatever. Just go get that degree and then go use it. And if you're super rich and you don't even need to use it, at least you have it if something bad happens and, there's some horrible thing that happens and you lose all your money. At least you have that skill and education where you can go back out there and continue to work in these very high profile, very lucrative jobs. That's the easy ticket. Don't let this highly successful, quote unquote, group of people go and take all of these opportunities. They want them because you should want them too. And the fact that you don't have the financial resources to go out and hire the tutor gives you a whole bunch of other assets. You have a very seriously intriguing and interesting story of overcoming obstacles that college application committees love. And it's real. Use it. Be competitive. Take the time, get your easy way to get your good income, quote unquote. And again, I'm not arguing for anything, but you're going to get into the best school you can and you're going to complete it. That's all you're going to do. It's going to be stressful. Yes. At times it's going to be very hard. Yes. At times you're going to feel like you can't do it. Of course you can do this. You're smart. Are you the smartest person? Maybe not. You don't need to be. You just need to finish it. And then you get out there and you have the same credential everybody else has, right? The valedictorian and the last person who the lowest grades, they all have the same credential. Now, of course, the person with the valedictorian may have other honors, certificates, and designations that will make even more awesome. But hey, you still have that same degree and credential, right? And then go out there and make the life you want for yourself. But you must do this, and that's the thing. Now you know what rich families know. Don't let them go take, not them, not us and them, but if you're not in that group of, quote, the rich families, you would already know this. You wouldn't probably be, well, maybe, I don't know. You must be competitive in either yourself and or your children and or any other relatives or people you just know, young people. I don't care if they're not relatives, whoever, young people that you talk to in the world. You've got to motivate them and show them this. I don't care the data, the statistics, the reality of it. Everybody wants that good life, right? And it's not going to happen for everybody through sports or entertainment. It happens for some people that way. But even if you become rich, you have to stay rich. Lack of education, lack of knowledge often takes somebody who did make, quote, a lot of money as an entertainer or an athlete, and now they're broke because they didn't understand how to manage money and how to be a business person and what to do to create more wealth. They just spend it all. So this is again, it's a longer than usual show just because I'm so passionate about this, and for the first show that we've done on this, I really wanted to take some time to sort of work through some of it. But I am begging you, I implore you, get out there for yourself and any other people, young people, and start working on this right now. You need to go to the best school program you can. You must finish, and then you're going to get out there and you have an entree to better opportunity. Not a guarantee, but an entree. I thank you so much, as always, for taking part in our show. You can go to CourtneyAnderson.com. Let me know what's on your mind. And again, thank you. I'm so grateful you were part of the program today.